Welcome to FEMA's Public Assistance Program webinars presented by the FEMA's Public Assistance Training section. This webinar is accepting a work order request and 24-hour call. There are two parts to this video. We will start with accepting a work order request.
Our objectives, how to accept a work order request. We will walk through how to locate your work order by using the bell feature. Once your Site Inspector Task Force lead has confirmed that work order request, it then turns into a work order. So to locate your work order, there are two ways to locate your work order. You can either use the bell or you can use that navigational menu. So many of you guys at this point in time should be familiar. This is our Grants Manager login page. We would log in by using our username and password, which should be well known by you guys as it is also the username and password for DTS, or our deployment tracking system. Once we have logged into Grants Manager, we are automatically taken to our dashboard. This is what our dashboard looks like. We have our bell up here in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. We have our navigational menu along the left-hand side of our screen. And then we have that welcome sign where you can drop that down. You can look at the sprint releases, you can sign out, you can do a few other features within that drop down as well. So let's jump into locating a work order request. So when a Site Inspector Task Force lead assigns you as a Site Inspector to a work order request, how does that Site Inspector get notified of their assignment? Through the bell, right? So in the upper right-hand corner of Grants Manager, your bell will get additional numbers, or we could also reference them as notifications, that you have received an assignment or a task. So using the bell, we would, step one, click on the bell and we will be brought to this page you see on the screen. There's a lot of red tasks. These are outdated tasks. But to locate your most recently assigned task, you would then follow step two by clicking the review button. Once you have clicked the review button, it will then open your work order request. So as you see here on the screen, at the title slide here, we have the site inspection work order. We then have that accept button in the upper right-hand corner, that green button. We also have a red decline button. You as a site inspector, when you receive a work order request, it would be beneficial for you to review the site inspection information, the address or location information, which would be in this box, as well as scrolling to your damages to be inspected and looking through that list, whether it's one damage assigned to that work order or if it's 14 damages assigned to that work order. You should get familiar with those and look at them prior to clicking accept. So once you click accept in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, a text box will populate asking you if you are sure you want to accept this request. Generally, you can go ahead and put in the text box accepting or accepted, or you can leave it blank. It's not a required field as it does not have an asterisk. So you would then go ahead and accept this work order request. If you must deny your work order or decline it by any means, whether it's scheduling conflict or maybe you have never done a site inspection on that specific category of work and you're not very comfortable with it, make sure you place a comment in the comment box and follow up immediately with your site inspector crew lead or site inspector task force lead to notify them why you cannot accept this work order request. So next steps after accepting your work order request. Once you have accepted that work order request, it will then be sent back to your Site Inspector Task Force lead who will confirm it. Once your Site Inspector Task Force lead has confirmed that work order request, it then turns into a work order. So to locate your work order, there are two ways to locate your work order. You can either use the bell or you can use that navigational menu. So let's start with using the bell. So first, we will walk through how to locate your work order by using the bell feature. So you're going to go up to that upper right-hand corner of your screen and you're going to select that bell. Again, you will be brought to your tasks page and you will then select review from that task page to open your work order. Once you click review, your work order will populate. Again, you have that general information. You have your location information. As you continue to scroll down your work order page, you will also see your damages to be inspected, staff and contacts, so you can reference that if there's additional site inspectors or maybe an EHP or mitigation personnel attached to it. And that's where you will also find your point of contact for the applicant. Using the navigational menu, first we would click on operations, which I believe now is called pre-award ops. So for those of you who may have seen the recent sprint in Grants Manager, these slides are now outdated, unfortunately, so we will have to get them updated. But the operations tab, I believe, now states pre-award ops. So same general location in Grants Manager, of course, just now different terms. So you would locate your pre-award ops tab and drop that down with the caret. And then you will locate work orders. So work orders, as you see on the screen, falls right underneath your work order request. But remember, you accepted that work order request. Your site inspector task force lead confirmed it. So now it is located in your work orders tab. So using the search bar, you can type in your work order number. So once you received that work order request and you reviewed all that information, maybe you wrote down your work order request number. That's when you could then input it into this search bar to search for your work order. Otherwise, you could go ahead and drop down the filters as well. You could filter to work orders assigned to you as a site inspector, maybe a particular applicant if you remembered that information from your work order request. So there's various ways, but ultimately, once you're in work orders, you can either utilize the search bar or the filters to locate that work order. And then lastly, you will click on the magnifying glass next to the work order to open it up. So as you see in the search bar, we put in our work order number, which was 39663. My work order populated. I'm going to click on that blue magnifying glass and it will then open my work order. All right, you guys, here's an activity. So at this point in time, I'm actually going to go into Grants Manager and show you in a live session how to accept a work order request. Okay, so this is Grants Manager demo, of course. So just give me a second to log in. And as you all know, this is the login page. It looks the exact same to Grants Manager Live. We go through the same process and we're brought to our dashboard. So again, from here, if you want to locate a work order request, you have two options. Generally, you're going to go to your bell because that's where you're going to be notified immediately. However, you can also locate it in your pre-award ops on your navigational menu by clicking work order request. But at this point in time, you would have to use some filters. So for instance, I would have to select assigned to role as a site inspector and then assigned to me, save. I'm going to run query. And then if there was a work order request assigned to me, it would populate here. You may also have to be specific about your event that you're attached to, etc. So the navigational menu is an acceptable path to use, but generally our bell for work order request are a lot easier to navigate to. So again, you're going to click that bell. We're going to wait for the page to load. And as you see here, same with the visuals we saw on the slide deck, I have my work order. So from here, I'm going to click Review. And now you see in the upper right-hand corner that Accept or Decline button. So again, at this point in time, because this has just been assigned to me, I want to reference the site inspector information. I want to reference the work order information, which is the general information. So when the site inspection is, the date and time, an estimated time frame for completion, my applicant name, and that work order number. So at this point in time, I'd probably jot down this work order number on my little handy dandy notebook or a post-it note, just so that I can make sure that I know that this is the most recent one that's assigned to me and I can locate it moving forward. We also have that location information tab. So here you can identify a physical address as well as a GPS to where you will be meeting the applicant for the site inspection. In addition, we have our damages to be inspected tab. So as I continue to scroll down here, I see there are 14 damages assigned to this work order. Okay, so I know this could be a busy day, right? And I need to make sure that I have a site inspection report for each one of these categories, in addition to extra site inspection reports, just in case something else comes up. Or maybe I drop my paper in a puddle and it gets sopping wet and I can no longer write on it. I may have to transfer that information to a dry site inspection report. Things come up in the field. We should all know that. All right. So from this point in time, I've reviewed everything. I'm good with the date. I'm good with the time. I'm good with the damages. I'm going to click Accept. Once I click Accept, again, we have that text box up asking, are you sure you want to accept this request? I am sure. This text box, the reason, it doesn't have an asterisk on it, so it's not required to fill out, but general practice, you can put accept, you can leave it blank, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and accept this work order. And again, I have the work order number written down, and this has now been sent back to my site inspector task force lead to confirm. So at this point in time, I'm going to go to my pre-award ops. I'm going to go to work orders, and I'm going to use this search bar. I'm going to use the search bar because I've written down my work order request number, and I'm going to input that number. I'm going to search, and look, it now populates in my work orders. From here, you click on that blue magnifying glass, which then opens up your work order. Up here, it will tell you who your applicant is. It'll identify that work order number. We are at the work order page here, and it is pending completion. So now that it has been created, confirmed, it is now a work order. Now I can locate that staff and contacts tab. And from here, I can identify who my primary applicant PDMG is, as well as who my primary POC is, as well as a recipient point of contact if necessary. And then of course my site inspector task force lead or crew lead may also be attached just to manage my work or my progress for this particular work order. I am the primary site inspector. There could be a secondary or an alternate site inspector as well. But Mr. Bob Jackson is my primary point of contact. So this information is what I want to look for, especially to document when I'm going to make my 24-hour call. So speaking of 24-hour call, let's go ahead and return to the slide deck and proceed with our presentation. Before I move on, are there any questions on accepting a work order request or locating your work order or initial work order request at this time.
Can 3 inspectors be assigned to a work order, or is it just the 2?
Multiple inspectors can be assigned to a work order, yes. I think generally you have the primary site inspector and then you have an alternative site inspector. I think there can only be a primary site inspector. You can have more than one alternative site inspector. Sometimes you might have a primary, an alternative, and then the site inspector crew lead may be assigned to it or not for visibility. Sometimes crew leads are not assigned to them. It just depends on the disaster.
Okay. My last one would be denying the work order. If there's not enough time, if the site inspector doesn't have, looks at the DIs that are going to be inspected and it says 2 hours and there's 14 DIs, the order of operations, how does that person just call up the TFL to ask for the change in time first, or just deny it straight up?
They should not straight up deny it. Do not do that. I would advise your staff to reach out to your site inspector task force lead and be like, hey, which your site inspector task force lead should be referencing this information as well. So if there's 14 damage inventories and it only says 2 hours, that person should have caught it to begin with and reached out to the program delivery manager and said, hey, are you sure this is only going to take 2 hours? Do you think we could extend this a little bit due to the amount of damages listed? And then the PDMG would go ahead and update that in the system. But generally, that time frame it's an estimated time frame. So of course, your site inspector could be like, okay, yeah, this seems reasonable in 5 hours. And then they get out there and they're like, oh, wow, this is not reasonable in 5 hours. So of course, if they're going to be out there longer, they should always communicate with you as a site inspector crew lead or the site inspector task force lead, however your disaster wishes to manage that. And also, if the site inspector is unable to complete the damages in the 1 day time frame, they can communicate with the site inspector, crew lead, task force lead, as well as the PDMG and the applicant and say, hey, we weren't able to finish this today due to whatever restrictions or the extent of damage. Applicant, are you available tomorrow, or is there another day you could be available to complete the site inspection? Then the site inspector with the applicant out in the field will contact the site inspector, task force lead, and PDMG and say, hey, we weren't able to finish this. Applicant B is going to allow me to come back tomorrow, so I'll be back in the office and I'll go back out tomorrow to complete the inspection. And you guys would just document that, whether it's in Grants Manager or your own documentation, just to make sure that you track where your site inspectors are.
Okay. Yeah, my crew is on this call, so I just want to make sure that they know that. And I'm asking for them, the same one, so if they don't complete it, in that 1 day, does the 48-hour clock start still, or does it just get we assign new DIs to the work order? So, and I think I know the answer. I just want to kind of clarify.
So the 48-hour time frame to submit your documentation and create that DDD, it's a performance goal, but it's not a requirement. So of course, if you have very extensive damage or a very complex facility, you may not get everything done within that 48 hours from returning to the office. Now, again, this 48 hours starts from the time you completed the site inspection and have returned to the office for input. And of course, it gets taken into consideration as well. If you completed a site inspection on a Friday, but you're not allowed office hours Saturday or Sunday, then of course, you wouldn't be able to start work on that until Monday. So, there's a number of factors that go into play, and it's not a strict 48 hours. So if you have a very extensive damage, it could take longer. Like if you have 35 pages of photo page, that's not going to happen in 2 days.
All right. Well, I think that answered my questions. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions before I move on? Okay, hearing nothing, I'm going to proceed with our presentation. So our 24-hour call, this is a step in the preparation process. So the 24-hour call will further assist you as a site inspector for your site inspection. Our objectives for this unit include discussing the purpose of the 24-hour call, identifying specific questions to ask the applicant prior to your site inspection, identify who should be notified of the upcoming inspection, and what to do if you cannot contact an applicant. So when should I call the applicant? So it's the responsibility of the lead site inspector to call the applicant at least 24 hours prior to the site inspection date. And typically this is the first thing in the morning and take the applicant's hours of operations into consideration. So don't call them, if you're coming into the office at 7 a.m., do not call them at 7 a.m. Let's try to think of general hours of operation, maybe 8 to 5, something like that. Call them at 8:30, give them some time to get into the office, get their computer warmed up, maybe heat up their coffee and settle in, all right? So, an example of when to call an applicant. If a site inspection is scheduled for Wednesday at 8 a.m., call the applicant on Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. or 8:30 or something of the sort. Keep in mind those hours of operation. If you have a site inspection that is scheduled on a Monday, contact that applicant the Friday before. And if a site inspection is for the Tuesday after Labor Day, so let's take holidays into consideration, you should make the call on the Friday before that weekend, right? We want to make sure that we get in contact with that applicant, we ask all the questions, we are prepared in order to meet them in the field on that following day. So what to discuss during the 24-hour call? Confirm the site inspection date, time, and meeting location. Discuss damages to be inspected, and this includes the name of the damage, the damage description, the percent of work complete, and any additional comments or information the applicant may have related to that damage or DI. This could include PPE, right? Is there particular PPE that may be required during the site inspection? Will the site inspection require a special parking pass, access codes, or a visitor's pass? Do I have to check in at the administrative office before we go out? Things like that. Will the site require entering any secured areas or that may need additional identification other than your FEMA ID badge? For an example, most police stations, prisons, jails, they require that you leave your driver's license at the front desk. Same with schools. If you're going to a school, you're going to have to get a visitor's pass. You're going to have to sign in, sign out, those types of things. So ask those questions. Be prepared. And let's take a second to talk about that percentage of work complete. So in addition to confirming the date, time, meeting location, and damages to be inspected for the site inspection, we want to make sure we discuss the percentage of work complete per damage inventory, per damage line item. This is vital during the 24-hour call because this is the site inspector's opportunity to review and discuss the work order and the damages to be inspected directly with the applicant. If all work listed on the work order is 100% complete, the site inspector should contact your program delivery manager to determine whether that work order should be canceled or not. Keep in mind that this is if all the damages to be inspected are deemed 100% complete. If there is 1 out of 3 damages 100% complete, the site inspection should still take place. So let's break this down a little bit further. If you're going to inspect a building, the damage at that building consists of roof damage, ceiling tiles, and drywall. You conduct your 24-hour call, and the applicant informs you that the roof has been repaired and replaced, and it's now 100% complete. However, those ceiling tiles and that drywall are not 100% complete. You would still conduct the site inspection, and you would document the 100% completed damages along with the damages that are less than 100% complete. So as you see on the slide here, this is just a snippet from the site inspector job aid. Anyone who is a site inspector should read that, should know it, along with the site inspector position assist. So as you see highlighted here, if an applicant representative reports that all sites on the work order are 100% complete, contact the program delivery manager. The program delivery manager will determine whether or not to cancel the work order. If some sites have been 100% repaired, or if upon arrival at the site, work turns out to be completed, inspect all the sites anyway to validate the work completion. So again, if you as a site inspector go out to the field and there are damaged components that are 100% complete, you should still document those. You still take pictures, you get dimensions, you ask the applicant what the cause of damage was, you ask them how they repaired it, you ask them what was there before. We want to know what that pre-disaster was because they're going to provide invoices and that has to be validated. Any questions on percentage of work complete? It can be a confusing topic out in the field, as a lot of times people say site inspectors don't inspect 100% completed work. That's if the entire facility and all the damaged components are 100% complete. And if you're already out there, you might as well take photos and document it, not only to cover yourself, but to also assist with making sure that that project is full and complete and that nothing is left out. So when it comes to additional staff on site inspections, so explain to the applicant during your 24-hour call who will be attending your site inspection with you and provide a brief explanation of their role or reason for attending. So additional staff can include other site inspectors, maybe a site inspector crew lead, definitely an environmental historic preservation specialist, as well as a hazard mitigation specialist, and any other FEMA personnel if necessary. During this time, you can also ask the applicant representative if they will be having anyone else from their organization attending the site inspection. This is to allow full transparency and awareness and preparation for your inspection. At one point in time, I went to an inspection that had 20 plus people from the applicant side. I was shocked. My jaw dropped to the ground. I had no idea that all these consultants and engineers and all these other people, congressional individuals, were going to be attending my site inspection. So try to get that information ahead of time during that 24-hour call. So what to do if an applicant does not answer? So if an applicant doesn't answer, you should follow these steps. You want to leave a voicemail. Keep in mind, it's important to leave a clear and concise message for the applicant. Many times, applicants may not answer when they see a phone number from outside of their area code. You want to follow up with an email. Make sure you're identifying yourself, your position, why you are trying to contact them, as well as your contact information for them to reach back out to you. And if you have left a voicemail and followed up with an email, reach out to the program delivery manager for an alternative contact or contact information. Oftentimes, the program delivery manager has multiple methods of contacting an applicant as they have had more dialogue with them. Never hesitate to reach out to your program delivery manager to gather additional information for the site inspection. This is important not only for a 24-hour call, but through the entire site inspection process. Never hesitate to reach out to your program delivery manager to gather additional information. We are a team. We're both on the PA side. We are not opponents. We want to work together. So in addition, if you still did not receive any communication from the applicant, inform your site inspector crew lead and site inspector task force lead that you cannot contact the applicant. However, you still need to continue your preparation for the site inspection. In addition, you want to make sure that everyone that will be attending, including your environmental historic preservation, your mitigation specialist, that they have the correct meeting location information. And when you continue your preparation, this includes gathering necessary tools, such as a tape measure, measuring wheel, PPE, printing out your work order, and your site inspection reports. Printing out your work order will allow you to then have that location address, as well as your staff and contact information and can better assist you during your travels there. And keep in mind, it is always beneficial for you as a site inspector to have extra site inspection reports, not only for the same category of work, but as well as other categories, just in case. So in addition, do not, under any circumstances, cancel a site inspection or decide not to go because you cannot reach the applicant. Just because you cannot reach the applicant does not mean it's unscheduled. Even if you cannot contact the applicant, you need to make sure that you show up at the designated time, at the designated address listed on your work order. Are there any questions about 24-hour call?
I don't know if you mentioned that, but one thing I found that, the person that you talk to on the 24 call may not be the person that goes with you, and making sure that that person that goes with you on the inspection knows the inspection. I think that's
correct. Yes, that is a very good point. So I'll go ahead and repeat that. I did not state it in the slide deck. We will make sure it gets added. But when I showed you that work order and that staff and contact information where it says primary point of contact, if you contact that applicant or that primary point of contact during the 24-hour call, you want to ask them, are you going to be the individual who is out on the site inspection with me? If they are not, make sure you gather the name, the phone number, and probably even an email, just in case, of the individual who will be out at the inspection showing you around. Remember, it's the applicant's responsibility to show you guys the damages. It is not the site inspector's responsibility to point out damages. Are there any other questions at this time? I do have a few slides to go through, just some housekeeping stuff. Just go ahead and shout if something comes up. So this is our DHS Office of Inspector General hotline. We hope that you don't have to use this, but in case you do, this is used to report corruption, waste, fraud, abuse, mismanagement, and misconduct to the Department of Homeland Security Office of Inspector General. There's a phone number at 1-800-323-8603, as well as a mailing address if you wish. I'll leave this up here just for a second in case you want to document any of this. So then moving forward, we also have our Procurement Guidance, or our PDAT, which is our FEMA Procurement Disaster Assistance Team. If you would like to review any procurement supplemental documents, you can visit www.fema.gov/grants/procurement. And of course, FEMA's Procurement Guidance for recipients and subrecipients falls under 2 CFR Part 200 Uniform Rules and provides additional details regarding federal procurement and contracting requirements. This concludes our accepting a work order request and 24-hour call webinar presentation. Lastly, for any grants manager related questions, please feel free to contact the grants manager grants portal hotline at 866-337-8448. And we have an abundance of individuals who are ready to assist you in any technical support within the grants manager system.
Thank you for watching.